Okay, this is the beginning of our Unit 4 live session, and I'm just going to briefly go over the two chapters that are covered in this week's sessions, which is Chapter 5, and dealing with methods. So in Chapter 5, we introduce methods, we introduce passing arguments to methods, and we talk about local variables, and we look at returning a value from a method, and we look at problem solving with a method. So what are methods? Methods are commonly used to break a problem down into small manageable pieces. This is called divide and conquer. Methods simplify programs. If a specific task is performed in several places in the program, a method can be written once to perform that task, and then it's used again, executed anytime it is reused again, which is called code reuse. This is an example of a void methods and a value returning methods. So what is a void method? A void methods are used to create a method. You must write a definition, which consists of a header and a body. The method header, which appears at the beginning of a method definition, lists several important things about the method, including the method's name. The method body is a collection of statements that are performed when the method is executed. This is an example of a method declaration. See the header and the body. This is an example of parts of a method header. These are parts of a method header, which are method modifiers, return type, method name, and parentheses. How do you call a method? A method executes when it's called. The main method is automatically called when a program starts, but other methods are executed by method call statements. A method should be documented by writing comments that appear just before the method's definition. The comment should provide a brief explanation of the method's purpose. This is called documenting your code. And the way you document your code in Java is, or document a method is, you begin with a /, asterisk, asterisk, and end with a asterisk / Let me go back one. These are example of passing arguments to a method. When you pass an argument to a method, be sure that the argument's data type is compatible with the parameter's variable's data type. Java will automatically perform widening conversions, but narrowing conversions will cause a compiler error. So how are arguments passed? Well, arguments are passed by value. In Java, all arguments, the primitive data types are passed by a value. Method parameter variables are separate and distinct from the arguments. If a parameter variable is changed inside a method, it has no effect on the original argument. This is an example of passing a reference as an argument. What a string? Strings are immutable objects, which means that they cannot be changed. When the line is executed, it cannot change an immutable object, so it creates a new object. This is a little bit more about local variables. A local variable is declared inside a method, It is not accessible to statements outside of the method. Different methods can have local variables. A method's local variables exist only while the method is executing. Local variables are not automatically initialized with a default value and must be given a value before they can be used. Returning a value from a method, data can be passed into a method by way of the primitive variables. Data may also be returned from a method back to the statement that called it. This is an example of defining a value returning method. This is calling a value returning method. This is returning a Boolean value. Sometimes we need to write methods to test arguments for validity and return true or false. And in that, we utilize a Boolean value. So, a large complex problems can be solved a piece at a time by utilizing methods. The process of breaking a problem down into smaller pieces is called functional decomposition. If a method calls another method has a throws clause in its header, then the calling method should have the same throws clause. For now, understand that Java require any method that interacts with an external entity, such as the file system, to either throw an exception to be handled elsewhere in your application or to be handled the exception locally. So that's what we want to cover with this chapter. Now we're going to move over into, that was chapter 5. Now, this week we'll also look at parts of chapter 7, which includes, let me open this up, which includes arrays and the array list class. So, this is the introduction to arrays. We're going to talk about processing array contents. We're going to talk about passing arrays as arguments to methods. Some useful array algorithms and operations. Return arrays from methods, string arrays, and arrays of objects. Talk about primitive variables. What do arrays allow us to create a collection of like values that are indexed? An array can store any type of data, but only one type of data at a time. An array is a list of data elements. How do you create an array? So an array is an object, so it needs an object reference. It is possible to declare an array reference and create it in the same statement. Int numbers equals new int 6. Arrays may be of any type: float, char, long, double. The array size must be a non-negative number. This is how you access the elements of an array. Inputting and outputting array elements. Array elements can be treated as any other variable. They are simply accessed by the same name and a subscript. Bond checking. Off by one errors. Array initialization. alternate array declaration, processing array contents. Array elements can be used in relational operations. They also can be used as loop conditions. Arrays are objects and provide a public field name length that is a constant that can be tested. This is the enhanced for loop. Example. This talks about the array size. The length constant can be used in a loop to provide automatic bounding. Take a look at this, at the code. You start at 0 and end at 1 less than the array length. This is how you reassign an array reference. This is not the way to copy an array. This is how you pass array elements to a method. Arrays are objects. Their reference can be passed to methods like any other object reference variable. Comparing arrays. So the equal operator determines whether array reference points to the same array object. This is the code. So here's just some use of array operations: finding the highest value, finding the lowest value, summing array elements, averaging. Those are just some common use of array operations. This is how you save the contents of an array to a file. It's how you read the contents of a file into an array. A method can return a reference to an array. The return type of the method must be declared as an array of the right type. This is a string arrays. This is how you call a string methods on array elements. They have several methods: to uppercase, compare to, equals, chart at. These are arrays of objects. This is a two-dimensional array, which is an array of arrays. It can be thought of as having rows and columns. Two-dimensional arrays are used a lot. Programs that process two-dimensional arrays can do so with nested loops to fill the scores array. This is how you print out the scores array. This is how you initialize a two-dimensional array. The length field, two-dimensional arrays are arrays of one-dimensional arrays. The length field of the array gives the number of rows in the array. So the length field gives you the rows. So there's no difference between passing a single or a two-dimensional array as an argument to a method. The method must accept a two-dimensional array as a parameter. It's an example of a ragged arrays. Yeah, so you can do three-dimensional arrays, but it's hard to visualize. But it can be used and useful in some programming problems. This just talks about a binary search with Java. This is a command line argument. A Java program can receive arguments from the operating system command line. This is an example of a command line argument and how you run it. This just talks about array list. This is how you use an array list. The array list class add method with one argument adds new items to the end of the array list. So that concludes Unit 4's live session. I hope everyone has a great week. And if you have any issues, please do not hesitate to send me an email or give me a call on my US phone. I hope everybody has a great weekend and watches the Super Bowl. Anyway, talk to you later. Bye-bye.